Founders of Lansing Marketing Hackers. I'm the digital sales manager with WLNS, and Paul Schmidt with UnoDeuce Multimedia is the other sponsor who has been involved since the very beginning. And the whole idea behind this group is to just get local marketers together and brainstorm and share ideas and hopefully sharpen our swords a little bit in the marketing game and find out new strategies, old strategies that are working, all that stuff. So that's what we're here to do. We'd also like to thank our sponsor, the Courtyard Marriott downtown. They provide the space and are supporters of our mission. And today I would like to introduce our speaker. It's Amy Zander of Zeedia Media. And she's here to talk about brand archetypes, and I understand I'm probably the only person in Lansing that hasn't heard this version of this talk, but this has been updated for our audience here today. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our mob boss, Amy.
Thank you. Appreciate it. All right. So thank you very much for having me here. I appreciate it. And first thing I want to say is I think everybody in this room can all agree that marketing is hard. It's hard. It takes a lot of time and a lot of effort and a lot of creativity and sometimes a lot of money, and we're always left with, oh, I know I'm not doing enough. I know there's more I can do. There's one more platform I should be on, or something I could be doing. And so I am here to help you make your marketing easier. I promise. And so what I'm going to talk to you today about is a branding philosophy called Brand Archetypes. And yeah, it's something that a lot of really big marketing companies that you've heard of that I'll talk about in a little bit use. But the good news is that you don't need a huge marketing budget in order to do brand archetypes. So that's really good news. So the first thing is, what is brand exactly? So before we can talk about brand archetypes, we need to talk about brand. And it might surprise you with the little things, but your brand is not your logo. It's not. Your brand is not your tagline or your color palette or any of those things. Those things support your brand, but what your brand actually is something that most small businesses actually completely miss when they're doing their brand and their marketing. And your brand is about an emotional connection that you are making with your clients and customers. And it's not all the emotions, because we can't have all the feels all the time. It's one specific emotion all the time. And we're going to talk about what that specific emotion is going to be for your particular business today. That's what we're talking about. So, all right, so what is an archetype? So an archetype is a universally understood concept that evokes an emotion and is powerful. It needs to be those three things to be an archetype. So archetypes have been defined by people over the decades like Carl Jung and these big, mastermind people and things like that. And there are 12 main ones that we're going to be talking about today. And it's very cool, because what universally understood means is that everybody on the planet, no matter where you live, what language you speak, understands what these 12 things are. So for example, the concept of a mother is an archetype. So if I ask somebody here in Lansing or in Ireland or Jamaica or anywhere else in the world, give me some adjectives that describe a mother, they're all going to come up with the same adjectives. The only caveat to that is maybe if you hate your own mother, you might use some different words. But most people are going to use words like caring, loving, supportive, nurturing, those kinds of things. That's what a mom is. Anybody anywhere is going to use that. So that's an archetype. We all feel the same way about it. So that way, if you use one of these archetypes for your brand, then everybody's going to understand exactly what the emotion is that you are creating for your brand. So how does something become an archetype? Just like I said, it has to be universally understood, create an emotion, and be powerful. We're going to talk about these 12 today, and I will get to what the 12 are, because everybody always asks that, but those aren't the only ones up there. Like Santa Claus, for instance, is an archetype. That's not one of these main 12 that I'm going to be talking about today, but there is a variation of Santa Claus in most cultures on Earth, Kinder Claus or different things like that. So that could be considered another one. So before we talk about the 12, there are some things to think about when you are choosing your archetype. So archetypes have an energy level. From high, there's some middle ones, and then there's some low energy. So your archetype that you choose for your brand has to match the energy of your company, and if you are the owner, face of your company, probably matching your energy as well. It doesn't have to be that way, but it is something to consider. If you are a high energy person, you are going to feel constricted if you pick a very low energy one, and vice versa. You're not going to be able to keep up with a real high energy one if you're more of a chill person. That's not going to feel right. So that's one thing to consider. The other thing to consider is that some industries gravitate towards particular archetypes. So for instance, the healthcare industry tends to gravitate towards the mother archetype. You know, if you go to a doctor or a physical therapist or a chiropractor or something like that, you want them to be caring and nurturing and supportive, right? Of course. So if your business gravitates, or your industry that you're in for your business gravitates towards a particular archetype, you want to keep that in mind, because I'm going to tell you why you don't want to pick that archetype if that's the case. All right. A really good example in our community here is that we have a very popular, well-known used car salesman in the Lansing area, and his name rhymes with Schmundance. And he is absolutely the jester archetype, right? I mean, everything that company does is weird and unexpected and wacky and crazy. And that is typical of used car salesmen. So if there was a business that was coming into the Lansing area and I was working with them and they were a used car salesman, I was like, he's kind of got that locked down, so let's look at all these other archetypes that might work for you, right? Because you want to stand out from what everybody is doing that's like you, all right? So that's another thing to consider. And then I'm going to give you an example before we get started, another thing to keep in mind, because any archetype can work for any type of business, period. It can, I promise. So here's an example. So on the left, we have a family riding bikes. It's a company selling bicycles. So their whole vibe here is like making memories and safety. We've got helmets on, probably little bells on there, and they're having memories. They're together. They're in a neighborhood. It's all like kind of motherly feeling, right? And then we've got the bicycle company on the other side that they're each alone. They're on dirt roads. It's more adventurous. They're, getting in the mud. They're more mountain biking, right? So they're like the explorer archetype, and this is the mother archetype, but they're selling the exact same thing. They're selling bicycles. This company sells mountain bikes. That company also sells bikes for kids. Just a totally different vibe and way to market the company. So it's just an example of how all these archetypes can work for any kind of industry. So, all right, so let's get into the 12 main archetypes. And just keep in mind that your brand really should permeate everything you do, including how you answer your phone, the message that you have on your phone when people don't get you, the sign-off, your email signature, your website, everything you do should be part of your brand. Everything. Even the color that you paint your conference room should have to do with your brand. All right, so let's get into the first one we have, which is the hero archetype. This is one of the highest energy archetypes, and it's very popular. It's all about productively, energetically saving the day, right? The company's going to save the day. Their service and products might save the day, but they're also going to make you as your customer feel like you can be a hero in your own life. So an example of this, a very popular one, is Nike, right? So like everything, all their ads are about people sweating and being athletic and getting off the couch and just doing it. And they don't really even talk about the leather they use for their shoes or the stitching or their customer service or anything like that. I mean, really, they don't even talk about their shoes at all. They just talk about being a hero in your own life, right? So that's what that is. Some other words for the hero could be leader or champion or avenger sometimes. And there is a local business here that a lot of us in this room are really familiar with that is a really, really good example of a hero brand, and that is Super Web Pros. So it's in their name, Super Web Pros. They're heroes. Their logo is a shield, like a superhero shield and everything. I mean, it's brand gold. They do it really well. Some other ones would be Nike, like I said, FedEx, Mr. Clean, the Army, Duracell, lots of brands that you're familiar with. It's a popular one. All right, so the next one is Jester that I mentioned a little bit. The big idea here is that if you're not having fun, you're doing it wrong. So everything about the gesture is funny. So if you're one of those people that is funny all the time and everything that you say is funny, this is great for you. It's very high energy, and to some people that might seem really exhausting. We have all seen those commercials where we're like, I think that was supposed to be funny. So that is like brand death to a gesture brand. You have to be funny. You have to. That's it. You can't just be kind of funny, right? And so you can be funny, dad joke humor funny, or you can be wacky, crazy, zany, nobody is going to expect anything that you ever do kind of funny. There's different flavors of these archetypes, but that's one of the things that is important for that. So the industries are, like we said, insurance. So Aflac was the first insurance company that started that with the duck, and then so many of them followed after that. Insurance is kind of a boring topic, so they're getting your attention with some humor, and you remember their little mascots and things like that. Alcohol is another one that uses a lot of humor in car salesmen, like we said. Some other popular brands that use this are Pepsi, M&M's, Frank's Red Hot, you know, put that bleep on everything. Aviation Gin, Ben & Jerry's. We all know those brands. We remember them. They're very memorable. The next one is the artist archetype, and this is being really, really creative and visionary, not only with what you are providing, but you are making your clients and customers feel like they can be really creative, whatever that may be. And so some examples of this, there's a really good company locally called Paper Image. That's a really good company. Their tagline is, "We do it all, but we don't do ugly." It's a great tagline, one of my favorites locally. And so they're very creative. Some other examples are Lego, Crayola crayons, Sesame Street is a good example of a creative one. So that is one. The one that's near and dear to my heart, the Outlaw brand. Zeedia Media is definitely the Outlaw brand, me being the marketing mobstress, self-proclaimed marketing mobstress. But this brand is all about, there's no rules, or rules were meant to be broken, doing things on your own terms. But the emotion that we're going after for this one is freedom. So outlaws have freedom because they don't have to follow rules. So the emotion that I'm giving to my clients is that freedom from the burden of marketing. Right? Marketing is hard, we all agree on that, and if you hire me to help you with your marketing, I will take that burden from you so you can go do what you're good at, right? That's what I'm going at. And I also use techniques that are a little bit outside the box, kind of like brand archetypes and things like that, so I'm a little bit of a game changer in that way. So some examples, other examples will be Harley Davidson, Apple, Tesla, things like that, people that are doing things not normally. And then we have the neighbor archetype. This is also a really, really popular archetype. Middle of the road energy level. This one is really popular with industries like contractors. You want somebody that you know and like, that you're familiar with, if they're going to come into your house and do something, fix your washer and dryer, things like that. They're very trustworthy because you feel like you know them. And a really good example here in the Lansing area is the 517 Living with Sarah Pierce, and the calendar that she provides. She's a very good connector of people. She's a calendar that's really easy to use and things like that, and she's all about community. That's a great example. Some other examples are Wendy's, Dunkin' Donuts, IKEA is another friendly example, although we might not feel so friendly when we're trying to put their stuff together sometimes. But they are the neighbor brand. And then we have the guru archetype. This brand is all based on truth. The truth will set you free. These brands are often highly technical. They provide a lot of stats, a lot of numbers, and they are basically, they know their stuff. Inside and out, they're credentialed, they're educated. Lawyers often gravitate towards this brand. It's very common to see lawyers in suits standing in front of a bookcase with the scales of justice, like, trust us, we're lawyers. It's very common. So other than that, like, school teachers, institutions, things like Google, Wikipedia, Harvard University, CNN, these are all big guru brands. And then we have the mother archetype, which we've talked a lot about. I'm not going to spend too much time on this because this is the one that everybody absolutely understands for sure. Like I said, a lot of healthcare companies and also a lot of nonprofits tend to gravitate towards this. But we do have a great example in the room of a mother brand, which is UnoDeuce. Multimedia is the mother brand. They are solely focused on customer service, telling their customer story and making them feel loved squishy and warm and fuzzy. And so they are a great mother brand. Some other examples are like Habitat for Humanity, Salvation Army, and Allstate, which is a rare insurance company that decided to go with something other than the Jester. So that's always exciting to me when I see people not following the trend. Then we have the innocent archetype. This is all about making things really simple, going back to childlike wonder. They are not going to be heavy on the stats and the numbers and things like that. They're probably actually not going to use those at all. They're going to use not big words and things like that, and it's all about making people feel really calm and relaxed. It's the lowest energy archetype out there. So they're also sometimes called the angel archetype is another common thing. And a lot of organizations that gravitate towards this are like companies that are using green technology because they want to portray that clean, simple energy, health foods, and a lot of products that are geared towards children. Makes sense. So some other companies are Coca-Cola is actually one of the most popular ones. If you think about their branding, it's like Coke and a smile, making memories, classic Coke, going back to childhood, thinking about having a Coke with somebody. It's all about that making memories, childlike wonder kind of thing. Chobani yogurt, I think it's got like 3 or 4 ingredients in their yogurt. Snuggle fabric softener, that's another one. And then we've got the magician archetype. This is all about transformation. I'm going to totally date myself here, but there was an ad like, Calgon, take me away, right? That was a ad, or I can't believe it's not butter. That was another old ad that was at. But if you think about also like Dyson vacuum cleaners is another one. They're like transforming and reinventing the way that we clean or the way that we vacuum with a whole new kind of vacuum cleaner. Mary Kay, a lot of cosmetics and things like that will pick the this magician archetype. Sometimes this archetype is called the butterfly instead of the magician. Magician, the word or concept of magician can sometimes evoke for people like trickery, because magician, sleight of hand or trickery or not truthful. So sometimes we call it the butterfly for a more feel-good term. But some other examples of this would be Disney is a really good example of this one. And then there's like Snickers, where we all know that Betty White commercial where she's all angry and then she eats a Snickers and she's fine, right? That's the magician, right? That Snickers was magically making her feel better. And then we have the explorer archetype. This one actually has 2 sides to it. A lot of these archetypes do have 2 sides to that, or some nuances or sub-archetypes. I'm not getting into all of those today. They are on my website, which is just simply brandarchetypes.com, and there's a page for each archetype on there, and it dives into all that good stuff on that website. But this one, so there's the physical exploration of the world, right? Like the bicycle example I gave earlier, where you're going out, exploring the world, like Jeep and Patagonia, camping stuff. A real easy one would be like travel agencies, things like that. You're going to see the world. But I think what a more interesting one is you are having an experience. And often this experience may be higher end. So a really good example of this is Starbucks. So Starbucks is absolutely the Explorer brand. Their logo, which has had a lot of iterations over the years, is a mermaid, basically. So it's kind of like the sea and exploration. But you're going to go into Starbucks because you want this Starbucks experience. You want, you're willing to pay the extra money to have this latte exactly the way you want it, with the free Wi-Fi and the smells in the coffee and the barista that puts your wrong name on the cup and all that good stuff, because often it's a little higher end. Right? So there's the physical part, or there's just an experience. So if what your company is doing is offering a unique experience for somebody because you want them to feel like they deserve it, this might be the right brand, the right archetype for you. And it's really fun to play around with that too. And then we have the lover archetype, which is, very common in marketing. There's also 2 sides to this. So there's the sex sells, straight across the board kind of, we're all familiar with that. Like every perfume commercial, ever, jeans, or the commercials that you watch and you have no idea what they're selling, it's usually probably this one, or this brand. But then there's also the side of it that's like romance, and like Hallmark is also the lover, because it's like romance and things like that, but it's pretty vanilla, right? You're not gonna get a lot of sex in Hallmark. So there's a lot of, alcohol, again, is one of those. chocolate companies, things like that that are about passion, romance. eHarmony, Match.com, all of those, they're tend to go towards that, which is pretty interesting. And then this is the last one. This is the 12th one. This is the ruler. This is not a common archetype. Not many people choose this, but it's a really, really powerful one. So the ruler is basically like, we've got the power. We're the best. We know it. And you're either with us or you're not, and we don't really care. They tend to dominate their industry. They're often not startups because you haven't necessarily proven yourself to say we're the best at something unless you are coming to the market with something that's really never been seen before. You can say we're the best because we're the only one doing this and we know what we're doing and we're it. And that can be a really powerful brand for that kind of thing. So some of the some examples of that would be like Hugo Boss or Mercedes-Benz, Rolex, IBM, American Express. They're kind of a more elite credit card that people get. So those are the 12 archetypes. So, all right. So, whoops, I went one too far. That's all right. So the next question is, some people ask, can I be more than one archetype? Yes and no. So you want your brand to be as direct and specific as possible. So it's better if you just choose one main archetype and stick with it. But sometimes what people will do is they'll be like the neighbor, but they'll be kind of like the funny neighbor, right? We all have a funny neighbor or a funny friend. And so they're mainly the neighbor, but they have like this undertone of gesture. You can do things like that as long as you never really flip-flop and the undertone doesn't dominate the other one, because then that's, again, distilling your brand. So, we've all, like this might sound familiar. So you're feeling kind of funny and frisky one day, and so you create like a fun Instagram reel. It's a little humorous, you put it out there for your business. But then you have a brochure that your tech team put together, and it's full of like stats and data and all this cool stuff that people really know because you guys know your crap. And then maybe you have a billboard that's like all splashy and eye-catching with your logo on it, right? That's cool. They might all have your logo on it, but they're all so different. They have different vibes, different feelings, different energy, and so you're not doing your brand any help. You're not doing it because it's still nobody's connecting with you in a particular way. And it's okay if that sounds familiar, because 95% of small businesses do that because they're not marketing experts and they're not branding experts and they're not doing something like this. And so this is my goal for Zeedia Media is really world domination in the fact that I want every small business to at least hear about brand archetypes, because it will make your branding and marketing easier if you do it. So how do I choose an archetype? So I have, let's back up. So as I went through those 12 archetypes, one of them may have jumped out at you and you might have been like, yep, that's it. That happens sometimes, and that's great. That's awesome. But that's not normally what happens. And especially if you have a team of people that you're working with, maybe you have a business partner or a creative team or something like that, and you guys have you have all your own opinions. So the first step is to go to brandarchetypes.com, and in the left-hand corner, there's a free questionnaire that you can take. And it's 90-some questions, kind of fun, and you put your business hat on and take it, and at the end of it, it will list all 12 archetypes in order based on your answers. And then you can go to the page on the website and dive deeper into that archetype. Really, the purpose of this is to divide these in half. Get rid of the bottom 6 and concentrate on the top 6. So we're just kind of trying to narrow it down. Again, some people will take this and the one that pops up at the top, they're like, yep, that's it, and they'll go with that one. And it happens. But again, like if you're not quite sure or you have a team of people that need to all decide this together, the next step after taking the questionnaire is to have a brand discovery session with me. So it's a 90-minute discovery session. We can do it virtually or in person with your team. I often suggest that if it's a solopreneur or somebody like that, that they have like a spouse or a friend or somebody who knows a lot about their business, so that you can at least have a couple people to bounce ideas off of. But we throw a whole bunch of words up on the board, we rearrange them and color code them, and it's pretty magical. And at the end of this 90 minutes, almost always your archetype reveals itself. And if not, then sometimes you're trying to decide between a couple, you think about it, maybe sleep on it and come back. But this really almost always gets people to decide on an archetype, and it only takes about 90 minutes or so. And we usually come up with a really cool tagline because we're using all these cool words that have to do with your business. So that's kind of a bonus off of that. All right, so I also have a book that I wrote. It's on Kindle. It's called Brand Archetypes. And it dives a lot deeper into this process that I'm talking about. You can walk yourself or your team through it yourself instead of having me do it. And it's got a lot of worksheets and things like that in it too. So this book is also available, and I do have some today if anyone's interested. And then, so the next question is, I chose my archetype, now what do I do? So usually what I do is I start with people's websites, because that has the most content and pictures usually for their business. And we start going through and saying, so let's say you picked the neighbor archetype. We're going to look at your website and we're going to be like, is this website neighbor enough? Normally I'd start with the name of your business, but most people aren't going to change the name of their business. I have gotten people to do it once in a while where it was really not in coherence with their archetype, but that generally doesn't happen. So we go through your website and we look at the words and the pictures and things like that, and we try to bring it around to feeling more like your archetype. And then we just start going through all of your marketing assets. It's usually a 3 to 6 month process. This doesn't happen overnight, but the quickest way to really start using your archetype is with your content. And so I also have word banks available. So I have a word bank for each archetype, each main of the 12 ones, so you can get them, and there are pages and pages and pages of words and phrases that have to do with the archetype that you chose, and it's a way for you to start getting that content into your stuff. So that's another thing. And then after you pick your archetype, you only have one question you ever have to ask yourself on anything you ever do with your marketing. And this is why this makes it easy. Is this neighbor enough? You create a post for Facebook, is this neighbor enough? You create a new billboard, is this neighbor? A new brochure, is this neighbor? And because we all inherently know what these archetypes are, and your coworkers know, and everybody knows what these are, the answer comes very quickly. Yes, it is, or no, it isn't. And I mean, I can pull up any website on earth right now and say, hey, is this a neighbor archetype? And you guys could look at it and say yes or no. You would just know. And you don't need to be a branding or marketing expert. You just need to be human, which is cool. So that's why I believe Brand Archetypes makes this really easy for people who don't have a lot of time but want a really powerful brand that resonates with people and is not all over the place. And it's a good way to check yourself too. It's also pretty cool because a lot of times when people get rebranded, whatever that means, it means different things to different people, but they'll hire a marketing company, pay them thousands of dollars to rebrand them, and then they'll get this huge, 100-page document. Here's your new brand. Cool. Set it on the shelf and go back to work because you've got a lot of stuff to do, right? But with this, you have to have a 5-minute or less conversation with a new hire or somebody that you bring on to explain what your brand is, and they will get it and they will understand it and they will be able to run with it. They don't even have to read anything, right? So that's why I really, really believe in Brand Archetypes. I think it could change small businesses' marketing outlook and at least save them some time and create more powerful brands. So that's it on Brand Archetypes. Questions?
I have a question.
Yeah.
Like when you were talking about the magician archetype, I think of that 1-800-GOT-JUNK commercial. I don't know if you've seen it where
I think so,
just
yeah.
point to it and it disappears, like your shed or your pile of junk or something.
Yeah.
Does that's just an ad campaign.
Right.
So based on that ad campaign, I'd say they're probably a magician, but 1-800-GOT-JUNK, would you say that they're necessarily a magician archetype, or would they be something else and they're just borrowing some magician for that campaign?
That's a really good question. I am not real familiar with the rest of the stuff that they do because that's what stands out and that's what we remember, so it's powerful. So that would be a really good exercise for them to do, or for any business to do. Hey, we had this ad campaign that really worked really well. Why did it work and resonate? Because it was with some emotion that people were resonating with. Hey, maybe we should build a whole brand around that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I didn't really answer your question, but that's a good point that you're making, is that sometimes that happens. Yeah. Yeah.
So I kind of want to embarrass you a little bit, maybe probably not, but what did it feel like when you realized that you had this light bulb go off? Like, oh, that's what this is.
Yeah. So that's a really good question. I was running a restaurant and I was struggling running a restaurant. And my mentor, Kevin, my co-author of that book, was a regular in my restaurant. And I was like, oh, I just picking his brain for marketing stuff. And he started telling me about this, and I was just like, oh my gosh. And then it's kind of one of those things where when you start thinking about it, you can't stop thinking about it. Like, I see archetypes everywhere, everywhere. I can't not see them anymore. And it was freeing, right? But I didn't know what the archetype for Zeedia Media was for quite a while. It took me a while to come to that, outlaw. And I didn't immediately think outlaw. I wasn't even considering it. And so what happened with that was once I picked outlaw, I said, okay, it says freedom, cool, that makes sense, freedom from marketing, all that stuff. But not until I adopted the marketing Mobstress and created my entire team around this concept of a mob where my assistants and underboss and my project managers are capos. And I really ran with it. I have a hat. I had a whole suit made, a Mobstress suit made. I mean, you'll see it if you come to the summit. But not until I did that did I really feel like my brand took off. And so that's a really good question that people ask, like, how far do you take this? All the way. Like, if you're not running, screaming, tipping, leaning over the edge of your brand, you're not doing it enough, right? If it feels ridiculously on brand, it's probably perfect, right? So, yeah. Did that answer your question? It was freeing, and I got really, really, really excited about it, and I wanted to tell everybody about it. That's how I felt. Yeah. So if there aren't any more questions about Brand Archetypes, I wanted to let the community know that I have my second annual marketing summit on May 11th in the Lansing. There's a event venue in the Lansing Mall. It's newer. It's where Tequila Cowboy used to be, and we're having it there. It's a half a day. And we're going to have a marketing trends from area marketing experts. Several of them are in the room right now. And then we're going to have a Q&A panel for people to ask their burning marketing questions and a networking portion. And then we give away a lot of prizes, like thousands of dollars worth of prizes. So you could get a new brand or a new logo, or the Courtyard Marriott here offered a prize. You can get a weekend stay here. Lots of stuff. So we have that going on. So you can register for that at ZeediaMedia.com. There's a page on there for the summit. We have a virtual ticket and an in-person ticket for that. Unfortunately, if you attend virtually, you can't win any of the prizes because I just logistically didn't know how to make that happen. But it's a cheaper ticket, and you can watch from your house. So I have that. And then the other thing I wanted to tell everybody was I host a award-winning Lansing podcast called Adventures in Business. My co-host is Lisa Fisher, and we interview, or we have guests on our show every week, and it's an opportunity for business owners, artists, entrepreneurs, hustlers, anybody doing something cool to come on and just tell us what you're doing. And you get 30 minutes to shamelessly plug yourself. We ask some fun questions, and then we market the heck out of your episode because that's what we do. We're marketers. So you can also find information about that podcast at ZeediaMedia.com. There's a page of the podcast, and you can listen to other shows, and then you can sign up to be a guest on there as well. So I wanted to put that's kind of our labor of love to give back to the community and promote all these cool businesses doing amazing things in our area. So.
What's the name of the podcast?
Adventures in Business, like Adventures in Babysitting, but Adventures in Business. Yeah. So.
Is it on like Spotify?
It is. Yep. Mm-hmm. Yeah. iTunes and Spotify and all that good stuff. Yeah. Yeah. So, if there's no more questions, then I have business cards and books if anyone's interested. And oh,
Awesome.
so. Thank you. Mm-hmm.
I have never heard. That's really interesting stuff.
It is. Yeah. Definitely.
Cool.
So you heard, you talked to Lisa recently, or?
My mentor for the lead.
Oh, is
She
it?
just called me and I was like, oh, I have to take it.
Yeah.
Now I don't feel bad.
No, yeah. Yeah. She just said, hi, Lisa.
I'm
Yeah.
an ambassador with her.
Yeah.
Lansing Chamber.
Oh, yeah,
I know
she's,
Lisa pretty well.
yeah, she's great. Yeah. Yeah,
Like,
we,
and she's so tight, like getting my mentorship in.
yeah. Yeah, we're in our second season of the podcast. I think we just recorded episode 15, but the first season had almost 100 episodes. So I've interviewed like 100. So we're talking about when people see you and they recognize you. Like I've done, I remember some of them really well, and other ones I'm like, I know they're on my podcast, but I can't quite remember like what the business was. But yeah, people recognize me a lot more than I recognize them when I'm out and about. But
That's cool.
yeah.
And it's nice to produce a television commercial when you do your own audio.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's fun. I like it. And I produce podcasts for other people too. So that's one of the things that Zeedia Media does is we produce podcasts.
Oh, nice.
So I have a few clients that do, one out of Tampa, and I have a one in town that I do too. So
Cool.
yeah. So yep. All right. Is that it?
Awesome. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Thanks.